Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and I'm so excited today to be participating in the second part of the Halloween Sewing Marathon. For today's tutorial, I am doing the Morticia Zip Around Wallet from Zelinsky's Patterns of Holdings. I bought this pattern as soon as it came out, and I've sewed it so many times. It is a fun pattern, comes together really quick, super cute, and although it looks very tricky, very hard, it's not. It's really not. This is a pattern that I can batch sew and get several made at a time. This wallet sells great at my craft shows. It's great as gifts. My nieces and nephews love these, so it's perfect for Halloween time, gift giving, but even year round. The wallet is a nice size wallet. It's really big, but it's still small enough that you could put a wristlet on it and carry it just by itself. When you open it up, you have your credit card slots. You have an ID holder. You can put this ID holder on both sides if you want. You have huge slip pockets. That holds my phone perfectly in the back of each of these pockets. I want to say thank you to Zelinsky's Patterns of Holdings for letting me film this tutorial. It's one of my favorite patterns, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity. I also want to thank everyone who helps behind the scenes of these sewing marathons. We have a YouTube group, a Facebook group now, the Marathon Society, and it's just growing so much. I want to thank everyone who films the videos, who watches the videos, and interacts with us. Always when I'm finished up with one of these marathons, I have such a wonderful sense of community. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating. I hope you watch everyone's videos today, and I hope you just walk away with that same sense of community that I feel, and I hope you learned something today. So let's get started talking about the pieces we need to sew up this wonderful wallet. You will need either a piece of clear vinyl or a piece of jelly vinyl like I'm using for that ID holder. After you cut out that piece of either clear or jelly vinyl, what I like to do is I like to immediately cut out the binding for the ID holder. I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is a piece of cotton woven, and what I do is I just fold the raw edges in to the center, and then I fold it one more time, just really creating a piece of double fold tape. I did use interfacing on all the pieces that are cotton woven except my credit card slots. So if you want, you can use an SF101 or your favorite equivalent and interface those also. Whenever I make this wallet, the first thing I do is I go ahead and cut out this ID holder and add the binding, and then I feel like I'm already started. If after I cut out these two pieces I still feel good, I can go ahead and attach these, and then I'm really feeling like I've started this wallet. Little things like that help me stay motivated in the sewing room, because sometimes it gets overwhelming when you have to think about starting a brand new pattern and cutting all the pieces and attacking something new. So when I just do it like this, I have one piece that I can already go ahead and get started working with. The next thing I always like to do is my credit card slots, because I love making credit card slots. I don't know why, it's just my favorite thing. With this pattern, you have the pattern pieces to cut out everything except your credit card slots, because it's such a long piece. It just doesn't make sense to have that pattern, and you can get the best, most accurate cut if you use a ruler and rotary cutter. So I'm going to show you and talk about my credit card slots. The first thing I want to say is that I did do mine wrong. You can see my skeleton is sideways. I wanted to use this fabric, and I just didn't have enough to do it the other way. I chose to be okay with that. So you can see this is a huge piece. I did not interface mine at all. I also had to piece that bottom together because I ran out still. Even though I cut it sideways, I still ran out. So yours won't have that cut there. You'll have a long enough piece because you will plan better than I did. So I have nothing on the back of these. You can interface this if you want. I just don't feel I need to when I make them, and so I don't. I feel like they're sturdy enough on their own, but you definitely can interface these if you want. What the pattern does, and this is such a cool way to make credit card slots, what she does is she gives you a series of measurements. So you go ahead and you take your piece over and you draw the lines on the back. You can't see mine very well, but this is a line here. This is a line here. All those lines she gives you, all she tells you to do, she says that every one of those lines, you fold your fabric wrong sides together and use your iron to press. So what you're left with then is you're left with a series of folds just like this. So you have all those folds there, you have everything pressed and crisped. And then what she tells you is how far to fold them up. So on your fabric she'll say, oh, fold it X amount away from the top edge and X amount away from that next edge and that next heel, that next credit card slot. And so it's a perfect way to do it. You're not folding these so much accordion style. You're folding everything wrong sides together, and then at the end you're really just placing them the way they need to go. So it's like a more organic way to do it. And really you can almost eyeball these and get them worked out the way you want to get them. Before I do anything else with my credit card slots, I do need to add my bottom trim. That piece is going to go here at the bottom, and then my top trim. That's going to go there at the top. Once I add those seam allowances in, you're going to see then that these side pieces are going to fit perfectly. Pay no mind that I have a little bit of selvage on mine. Sorry, I was saving fabric. We'll just tuck that in because it'll be hidden in the seam allowance. So you can see how this is coming together, how it's like a very logical pattern. It makes sense when you're doing it. You're going to cut these credit cards in half and attach one each to the side. Then you have your backing pieces. That will be the inside of your slip pocket. Let me show you here so we can kind of look at it together to make sure you understand the way it's going to look. Here's my credit card slots. That's your big piece here. This is the top. This is that bottom. These two pieces here, top and bottom. Then you have your side pieces. That's these skinny pieces here. This is going to be your lining piece. I haven't shown you that yet. And then this little trim and the back here, these are called your bifold back pieces, and they're going to go behind each of the credit card slots. You can see how quickly, how logical this pattern comes together. It makes so much sense. One thing we have to know, since we're doing two sides and we have unique shape, these pieces have to be mirrored. Our bifold card trim pieces have to be mirrored. One you will cut with the pattern printed right side up, the fabric right side up. The other one you'll flip that pattern piece over, keep your fabric right side up. That's how you can do those. Or you can put your fabrics right sides together and cut it once. Same thing for these backing pieces. They need to be mirrored as also. So you will have two pieces that you need to cut out mirror shapes. Of course, you'll have to cut your interfacing mirrored, or you can interface first and then cut it out, whichever you feel most comfortable with. So that is those pieces. We also have the lining. I'm using everything the same. My fabric, this fabric here, is from J&R Edwards. I just like the print, so I just went with it. I'm not using anything really different except for my ID and my credit card slots. Everything else is the same. And then for this lining piece, I'm just using the interfacing, the SF101. For my exterior, again, I'm using that same print. I love the print. It works out great for me. I did go ahead and use, I'm going to see if you can hold this up so you can see it a little bit better. This is a tag from Heartwood and Hide. It does say hauntingly handcrafted. I stitched that onto a piece of green vinyl. The vinyl's from J&R Edwards also. And then I stitched that entire thing onto the front of the wallet. I didn't really know exactly where to put it, so I just want to make sure that I put it down far enough so that the seam allowance wouldn't mess with it, and centered with these two marks here at the top. Will it look okay at the end? I think so, but we'll see if I have it done right there. The main thing I want to talk to you about the exterior, though, is the interfacing on this. So when we have the cotton woven, I went ahead and immediately interfaced it with my SF101 equivalent. But on the inside, I cut 2 pieces of Decaville Heavy. You do get a pattern piece for this, and it is going to be mirrored. But then I also cut out a piece of Decaville Light, pattern piece again for this too, and this is considered the spine. And so we don't want that heavy Decaville in the middle here. It would be hard to fold and it would crease, but I still wanted some support. The designer felt that was necessary, and this interfacing really does help with the structure of this wallet. You can look here and see everything's firm, but it is able to close and open easily without any distortion or creases there on the back. Those are the pieces you need. So when you get started, go ahead and interface everything here. If you want to add a tag, you can add it here. You could probably add it here, just where mine was kind of big, I wanted it up at the top. So that's your exterior. Here is your lining. 2 of your bifold card slot trim pieces. 2 of your bifold backing pieces. This is going to be like the lining for your slip pocket. Credit card slots. Top and bottom trim for your credit card slots. And then your vinyl ID with the binding on it. I'm also going to use a zipper. The pattern tells you how long to cut the zipper. I'm using a number 5. I do suggest a number 5. I think if you used a number 3, it would be very tricky on this. So I suggest the number 5. My zipper tape is from So Majestic. And then I'm using 1 zipper pull on mine. Those are all the pieces we need. Everything is ready to get started sewing this wallet. So what I'm going to work on now is my ID pocket and my credit card slots. For the ID window, I have my binding attached, and I'm just going to top stitch on both of these pieces. Then you will also see me do a couple things with my credit card slots. What I need to do now is I need to attach the bottom and top trim. For the top piece, all you do is you just fold it right sides together and sew with the seam allowance given along the top. If yours is directional, of course, make sure you have it orientated the right way you want to go. Line up those raw edges, and then after I sew them together, I will flip them the right way and then top stitch. I will top stitch on this part on the trim, and I'll have the seam pushed up so that I sew both on the seam and the trim. You will also see me going ahead and attaching the bottom the same way. I have it orientated the way I want it to look. I flip it up. I sew, back stitching of course with the seam allowance given the pattern. Then I will flip it down with the seam going down this time so it's behind the trim, and then I will top stitch on the trim, sewing through both the trim and the seam allowance. The next thing you'll see me do is you will see me top stitch each one of these heels. In order to do that, I'll have to separate them one at a time. Separate that one, top stitch it, then separate this one, top stitch, and do the same with the other 2. Now, top stitching your credit card slots is not a necessity. It's more for looks. It may add just a little bit more structure there and a little bit more support. So you could skip it if you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and do that with all of these. After I have everything top stitched, I'm just going to baste down the sides of my credit card slots to hold them in place. When I baste, I will go in the way that I will sew the basting stitch in the way the credit cards lay, so that I'm not trying to go the wrong way and my feed dogs are pushing them down. It's a little tricky when they're easily to move, so I'll just be careful and go slow and sew down both sides to secure those credit card slots in place. So I have the binding attached to my ID holder, so I'm going to set that aside, and then I have the top and the bottom trim on the credit card slots, and I top stitched the slots and basted down the sides. The other thing I did off camera was I drew a line down the middle of these two credit card slots. Let me hold that up so you can see it. The pattern tells you exactly how far in, but it's basically in the middle. What I'm going to do now, and I drew this line on with something that's permanent because I'm going to cut down that line. But before I do, the pattern tells us to go ahead and baste 1/8 of an inch away on each side of this line first. And what that does is that's going to stabilize these credit card slots, and it'll make it much easier so that after we cut it, they're not shifting around. So I'm going to baste on 1/8 of an inch away from this line on each side, and then I'm going to cut down the middle of these credit card slots. Okay, so now I have these cut into two individual ones. I'm going to take my ID holder, and the pattern tells us where to place this. You're measuring from that last folded edge there, and I'm going to put that in place. And what I want to do now, after I put it in place, is I'm going to baste the 3 sides. I don't need to worry about that top because if I closed it, then I couldn't put my ID in there. So go ahead and baste this in place. If I have any overhang, it looks like I might have a little bit, I'm going to trim that down also. I have my ID slot attached. It is perfect. If you want to do that to your second piece, you can do that as well. Now I'm going to pull out the 2 bifold card slot trim pieces and go ahead and orientate them just like this so you can see how it's going to look. Because we're going to have the slip pockets in the middle, so this is the way we want them to look. Once you get them orientated the way you want, go ahead and flip them right sides together along that long edge. Now I'm going to put a clip or 2 there in place. So now that we have the card slots and the bifold card slot trim right sides together, clipped along that long edge, we're just going to sew that long edge with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm going to back stitch at the top and the bottom. After I have these sewn together, I will flip it over and top stitch on the bifold card slot trim piece, and I will have the seam underneath that piece. So I'll be top stitching through the trim and the seam both. Okay, so we have the bifold card slot trim connected. It is time to add the backing for those slip pockets. So you'll have 2 pieces like this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to lay it right sides together with that long edge. Match up that long edge there. Do the same thing with the other piece. And you will have some overhang on the back because we do want this to be that decorative look there. So it's okay that you have overhang on the back. Match up these straight edges first. That's the first thing you do. And now what you're going to do is you're going to back stitch at the top and the bottom and sew down that line with the seam allowance given in the pattern. So now that I have both of these sewn together, what I'll do is I'm just going to take it and flip it and kind of push that seam open a little bit. You have a lot of bulk there, so it's not going to be perfect, but I just want to kind of open it up a little so it lays just a little bit flatter. And then what I'll do is I'll pull these wrong sides together, and you're going to match up the raw edges. Let's put some clips there to kind of help since it's a lot going on, and we want to make sure we keep that line of those 2 pieces connected. So now that I have those lines connected, what I'm going to do is kind of push everything out, and that should give me that little trim there and have the place where I'm going to top stitch. So I'm going to top stitch down that trim on this piece, but then I'll go ahead and baste all the way around everything so it's one solid unit, one solid piece. I'm going to do this on both of these, so I'm going to repeat those same steps for this other one. Now that these are all connected and all one solid piece, we're going to go ahead and pull out this lining panel. What we'll do is we'll have the lining right sides up. The lining is the one without all the other pieces of interfacing or stabilizers. It's just got the cotton woven and a medium weight interfacing on it. And what you do is you just line these up. Top corner, match that up. And then I just want a little bit of a gap there at the bottom just so it can fold easily. It fits pretty much perfect, but if you need to adjust it any, just keep those things in mind. So now when you have these, then you can just baste all around to have this one complete unit. So we have the interior left, we have our exterior left, we also have the zipper and a zipper pull. So now it's time to combine everything all together and make a wallet. When we get to this step, something I like to do is I like to check my exterior against the interior. Just because you have a lot of things going on, you just want to double check. It should be fine because you should have cut out your exterior and your interior from that same pattern piece, but just go ahead and check and make sure everything looks good there. Go ahead and add your zipper pull onto the zipper. We're going to baste this, the closed end, really well. We want to make sure that we baste at the very end to where this zipper pull cannot come off, because we're going to have it opened all the way and there's going to be a lot of moving around the thing. So do that. And then on the open end of your zipper, I want you to use the measurements given the pattern to make 2 marks. I make these marks on both sides. I even go ahead and make them on the back because there's points when I want to check both ways to make sure it's even. So make those marks and go ahead and baste this closed really well, and then we'll start putting everything together. Take out your exterior piece. We're working here first, and what we're going to do is we're going to open this all the way. Go ahead and pull your zipper pull all the way down to the bottom, and that's where you want to make sure that you have that secured or it'll just fall off. We're going to attach this zipper on here, and I like to do one side at a time. So I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to place it right sides down onto the exterior. I'm going to start at the top. So that first mark that you made is going to be where you put, and that's why I have it on both sides, where I'm going to put that right there on that V. So your first mark goes directly on the V. You're going to start clipping all the way around. Now when you get to these corners, yes, you're not going to have that perfect right now, but we will sew it perfectly. We will use a stiletto. You can use a hemostat, but for right now you can just kind of push it up there so you can keep bending everything else all the way around and get it clipped all in place. When we get to the bottom, we're going to use the pattern measurements, the pattern instructions, to make another mark at the bottom. So that mark is going to be right away from that little indentation, that middle spot of the exterior. So make your mark there too. I also make those same marks in the pattern, gives me where I make them, on my lining as well. So from that top V, I make a mark on both sides. From that bottom kind of inverted V, I'll make the mark there. When I'm sewing this, I'm going to sew one side at a time. So we have that first mark lined up with the first V, but that second mark I made, that's where I'm going to start sewing. So I'll start sewing here. You're going to back stitch really well. You're going to go up to each point. You're going to go, and I'm going to use my stiletto. I'm going to have it pulled in place, and you're going to try to make that mark as sharp as you can. The main thing to do is try to be consistent with your seam allowance. I try to find that middle point to where I am able to maintain a consistent seam allowance and still get these sharp points on every corner. I go slow. This is the slowest part. And if you are not perfect and it's a little wavy, that's okay. It still is a great wallet, but just try to be careful with the seam allowance and keeping the zipper tape raw edge align, and then pivoting at your corners. When you get to the bottom, you're going to stop sewing at that other mark you made there. So you'll have extra zipper tape at the top and the bottom. Your zipper pull will be at the bottom. You'll back stitch at these marks you made from where you start and stop. So we're going to do one at a time. I'm going to start this one at the bottom and put my needle down right there where that mark is. Okay, we're coming up to that first corner there, so I'm going to go as sharp as I can right there, and then I'm going to pivot, push my tape down with my fingers. If you want, you can get your stiletto and push it down too and get as sharp as a peak as you can there. So we're not doing like a rounded corner, we're actually doing a really good pivot there. And if you want to on the exterior, if you're like, hey, I just need to do a basting stitch first to get everything caught, then you can come back with the lining and get more of that seam allowance in if that's easier for you. I'm coming up to the end and I want to make for sure that I stop at that second mark I made, so I have that distance between the V and where the zipper sewing ends. So I have the first side completed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete that same process for the second side, pulling it up, lining up those measurements at the top, having my zipper right sides down on my exterior, and sewing all the way around slow again. I'm going to do that part off camera, and then we will come back to show you how to add the lining to the wallet as well. So I have the zipper attached completely to the exterior. Let's look at how it looks here. We have these parts free at the top. We have this part free at the bottom. There's where our pull is. It's secured. Now we're going to take our lining, and of course we're just going to place it right sides together. So lining, exterior, right sides together. We went ahead and made those marks on the top and the bottom of the lining. We're going to match everything up, clip everything together. When we're clipping, we want the zipper to be clipped flat. When we're clipping these two together, we don't want any parts like clipped up like this. Of course, if we sewed it like that, the wallet would be unusable. So while I clip everything flat, when I'm sewing, I'm honestly sewing this and kind of feeling ahead with my finger to make sure everything's flat. If it's not flat, I'll use my stiletto or my fingers to kind of make sure that I don't sew over any of these zipper teeth that would make this wallet unusable. But I just want to make sure that I stop and don't sew over anything. Like when I'm stopping here, I don't want the zipper to be like sewn and I'm sewing over the teeth like that, anything like that. So I want to make sure that when I sew over to that end point, that the zipper tape is laying down flat. The other thing I want to do when I'm sewing this together is I want to leave this long portion, I'm going to leave most of it open. So I will come in from this curve and go down a little bit, back stitch, up from here a little bit and back stitch. And that is our turning hole. That is where we turn. So I'm going to leave it pretty decently sized so that I can pull everything out easily without any problems. So I'm going to clip this all together and then I'll come back and we will sew it. So I have the lining exterior clipped right sides together. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start here at the top at that mark I made at the lining, and I'm going to back stitch and start going around. I'm going to go around to this long straight piece and then I'll back stitch and break my stitches here. Start back sewing again, back stitch, go down to this second mark I've made in the lining and back stitch, break my stitches again. Start again here at that other mark, go all the way around to the top, back stitching both times. While I'm doing this, I'm going to be going so slow. I'm going to make sure that I feel to make sure that zipper tape is straight underneath these marks. If I feel bunching, I'll go with my finger, my stiletto, and smooth it out. I want to make sure I keep that seam allowance perfect and that I pivot really nicely on the corners. So this is the trickiest part, but it's still not hard. It's just you got to go slow. You got to take your time on it. It's not something that you're going to race through, but don't be scared to do it. The wallet turns out great. Even like with mine, zipper corners aren't perfect. You can see there's some wobbling. There's some places where I got uneven stitches, but it still looks so cute. Even though I'm not perfect at it, I still highly suggest you make it. The shape is wonderful, so don't be scared of this last step. Just go slow, take a minute, and do it one stitch at a time. So I'm going to go through and start stitching this. I will speed it up because it's going to be really slow, but just know I'm taking my time. I'm not rushing it, even though it might look like I'm rushing it on camera. Okay, so I have the exterior and the lining sewn together. The last thing to do is to turn it inside out and then top stitch all around. Let's go ahead and be honest. If I turn this inside out, this is the first time I'm turning. If I turn it inside out and I've missed places on the zipper and I need to go back and fix it, you're not going to see this clip. I'm just going to edit it out. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I'll say like, oh, this is the second time I'm turning it. But I definitely wouldn't make you sit through 2 turnings. My opening's a little bit small, so it may take a while for me to get it turned out. So if it gets too long, too boring, I'll fast forward through this part. Okay, so I got it turned inside out. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to make sure that it zips and that everything looks good, like I didn't have it sewn too close to the edge and I can get it zipped around and all that business. Okay, everything zips up, so that is good. I can zip it. So now what I need to do is I need to open it back up and start working on the seams to get ready for the top stitching. Now the designer has a great tip here. I'm getting mine stuck in that little... Be careful that you don't get it stuck in that where that is open. The designer talks about how this is a great time to kind of hammer down these seams. They're going to be thick in there. So you can definitely hammer and push that down, put clamps. You wouldn't want to use clips, but if you have those bigger clamps, that's going to work because these are some thick seams. You can't see it, but they're kind of sturdy in there. So what I want to do now is I want to get these parts right here and push them inside that hole. So I'm going to stick my hand inside there and start getting the zipper ends poked through that little opening, so whenever we top stitch around, we'll close that up. It's not hard to get it in, it just takes a little bit of time. Okay, now I have to get the bottom pushed in as well. This one I feel like is just a little bit trickier for me. Whenever I don't like a big bump there, but it's kind of hard to keep it from being just the, like, if this pulls down, it looks great. See how that looks really good? I like it like that, but I don't want it too big so it's like hanging out. So when I'm working with this bottom part, I'm going to try to push it in as much as possible. Again, I'll go in that opening on the side and start working it in. You can use your stiletto too if you need to, but I just kind of go slow and push and finagle. It just goes in there. Once you finally get it started, it just slips right in. It's not like, it actually is not horribly bad from that side, but from the back you can see I'm a little off center more there. That's the front. Okay, so I'm going to open that back up now that I got that pushed in, and I'm going to take this opening here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to flip that down. So I'm going to start right here and start clipping all the way around, and then whenever I have it clipped in place, all I have to do is top stitch all the way around, and that will close up my opening here. It'll also close up the 2 spots where the zipper, where I just inserted them in at the top and the bottom. Now, at the top, it's not an issue. You're just going to sew straight across, no problems. But at the bottom, it's a little bit tricky because we have that zipper pulling away. We don't want to pull it out too much or the zipper tape will come out and make an ugly bump. So usually it takes me a little bit of finagling, and there has been times that I have taken whenever I've like restitched. I pulled out the stitches and restitched again because I wasn't pleased with it. It's not like it has to be perfect. It's just, I kind of like to try to get as close as I can to having it look nice. After we get this pushed down, if you want to use your big clips or if you want to use a mallet and kind of hammer these seams flat, that would be a good idea. But here's what it looks like. Everything's looking great. I love it. And now what I want to do is I'm going to stitch all the way around this wallet to close everything up, to get everything nice and neat. I'm trying to decide. I think I want to sew from the exterior. I have black thread, so it's not going to be as bad. And I really want to watch some of these spots to hold them flat on the lining. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start right here at this big bulky seam right here where the opening is and start closing it up first. I'm going to go ahead and lengthen my stitch length. Since we're going over a lot of bulky seams, I want to kind of give myself that little bit of a grace. I'm going to slowly go around here. I'm probably going to just hand crank here at the beginning to get this bulky part started. And then I'm going to start stitching now here forward and backwards as a regular back stitch. And then I will sew, after I sew everything around, I'll come up again past that bulky part one more time. Okay, I'm right here at the top. I'm going to try to get the zipper teeth to not overlap outside the wallet, to only overlap underneath, so that way I can close it all the way to that top without having a gap there. I'm going to go ahead and do a back stitch right here where this opening is, just for some extra security. Okay, so I did go around the entire perimeter of the wallet. Now what? And everything looks great on the inside. That is stunning. Seriously gorgeous. I think it looks great. Everything's beautiful. The fabric is from Jane R. Edwards. The zipper tape is from So Majestic. The tag is from Heartwood and Hyde. This pattern is going to be linked in my description. This is an older pattern of hers. I know I've been sewing it since 2020. I don't know actually if it came out in 2020. I think it did. I think I bought it as soon as it came out, and I've been making it ever since. I love it. The pattern does tell you that you can make stitches down the middle. I'm not going to do that because I just feel like it looks good enough with the structure and everything on its own. But you can definitely follow the pattern instructions to do that. Everything looks great. Thank you so much for joining me on another one of these sewing marathons. I want to thank everybody that's participated, everybody that's watching. Please make sure you watch all the other videos. If you have any suggestions for a pattern that you would like to see sewn in one of these marathon styles, let us know. But again, thank you. I hope you make this. If you make it, please post it in the Zelinsky's Patterns of Holdings Facebook group. Tag me in it. I would love to see it. And I hope you have a great day sewing something hauntingly handcrafted.